First of all, some housekeeping information for all of you. You can see the control panel on the right side of your screen. Everybody is set on mute by default. So if you want to switch, for example, audio to from telephone to microphone and speakers, you can also do it on that panel. And if there are any questions, comments, or technical issues during the presentation, we will also collect these in the chat field here in the panel. And after the presentation, we will have a short Q&A session if we have time, and then we can also discuss these questions which appeared here. Yeah, and if possible, please also address the name of the speaker you would like to address the question to. Good. So the host for this webinar is the Healthcare Task Force team of the NFC Forum. My name is Stefan Genser. I'm Sales Director at Identiv and also Chair of the Healthcare Task Force at NFC Forum. Our target in general is the promotion of NFC technology in industry by sharing information and exchanging experiences. So I'm very excited to be your moderator today, and we will also now have a look at the presenters of today. So just to check if you can hear me all. A big hello to Tanya in the beginning. Tanya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you very much. Welcome to be here. Dr. John Rogers from Northwestern University. John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Super, perfect. And finally also Vincent Bouchard from Grapheal. Vincent, are you here?
Hello, hello everybody. Yes.
Great, so we are all in the room and we can start right away. The agenda of today starts with a short introduction of our NFC forum, and after that we start right away with the 3 presentations focusing on NFC in healthcare. The industry leaders will introduce to you the usage of NFC in medical and healthcare applications, and also how the technology is making a positive impact on lifestyle and quality of life in general. We will end the whole webinar with some closing remarks and the Q&A session as mentioned in the beginning. But now let's start with a short overview on the NFC forum. So the NFC Forum in general is an industry association comprised of more than 300 member organizations all over the world. So these include the most familiar global technology and consumer companies who actively collaborate with different bodies in order to deliver solutions. So you can see here some quite well-known names here on the screen, and the solutions we are working on here are, for example, related to use cases in transport, packaging, automotive. But what we are also right now doing is, of course, dealing with the topic of healthcare. And the webinar today is part of this whole approach. And NFC in general, probably most of you know about it. It stands for Near Field Communication, and it's a standards-based short-range wireless connectivity technology, which allows many features to make life easier and more convenient. So we know it from many different kinds or sites in our lives. And we are working here with a range of 2 centimeters of reading distance and the ability even to share power across connections. So with NFC, it is really easy to make an improvement. Okay, moreover, we also had a recent ABI research report across 9 different countries, and these were also covering a variety of different age ranges, and the result is really stunning here. So we found out that already 85% of the consumers are already using NFC technology. And beside mobile payments, which is the most obvious one, this includes also public transportation as a key driver. And also, in general, tapping consumer products or unlocking doors is becoming increasingly important here. So all in all, nearly half of the people prefer, meanwhile, also using mobile phones or smartwatches with NFC over a contactless card. So this shows how much NFC is already increasing its value in our everyday lives. But we see this technology to be much more bigger than we have it right now. There is much more potential for the future, and we will want to have a look in the NFC technology also, of course, in the field of healthcare. And that's what leads us already to the first presentation. So I welcome Tanya here with her presentation. Tanya from ST Micro. Please, you can go on with the first presentation of today's webinar.
Okay, thank you, Stefan.
Welcome.
So hello everyone, my name is Tanya Guide and I'm NFC product marketing in ST Microelectronics. So the digital transformation of the healthcare and wellness leads to what we call the Internet of Medical Things, IoMT, that enables remote patient monitoring. In this way, the patient can be aware of their own health, the quality of care is improved, and the communication is easier with doctors and clinicians. This is what I'm going to talk about in this webinar. Oops. Yep. So NFC can enhance healthcare and wellness experiences by simplifying complex environments, adding convenient connectivity and consumer-friendly interfaces. It brings a convenient connectivity that allows quick interaction. So as intuitive technology, NFC is opening a wide range of use cases. For example, data logging for monitoring biometrics by simply tap the NFC tag embedded in the healthcare device. So particularly useful for remote patient monitoring. And thanks to PhD, doctors can get the data very quickly. I will explain what is PhD on the next slide, actually. Another use case is the parameter settings, which is very useful for manufacturing because they can configure their product already in box and without having to power on the device. So very useful. Also, firmware upgrade is very easy using NFC, especially in the field. Maintenance also is simplified using NFC to identify causes of failure and so even when the device is power off. So very useful. As healthcare products are in general highly sensitive to external factors, smart monitoring also is key for ensure consumer safety. So to do so, NFC tags can be coupled with environmental sensors, and it can be used to track any breach in the storage or transportation protocol all along the supply chain. You can also do charging small devices using NFC. Small devices such as hearing aids, for instance. You can also pair BLE or Wi-Fi devices just with a single tap. And many others can be possible. On this slide, I will talk about the ISO IEEE standard 11073. So ISO IEEE 11073 is a family of standards designed to facilitate the communication between medical, healthcare, and wellness devices, such as blood pressure monitor, weighing scale, glucose meter, for instance, and external computer systems for monitoring by physicians or doctors. These standards specify the PhD communication protocol. PhD means personal health device. So it specifies the protocol between an agent and a manager. So you understand the agent is the device and the manager is the reader. This standard, IEEE 11073, is split in two parts, actually. The device specialization layer and the optimized exchange protocol layer. But data link and physical layer are not part in this standard. That is not dependent on the physical layer. That's why NFC Forum introduced in 2013 the PHDC standard protocol, PHDC Personal Health Device Communication Standard Protocol, that defines the framework for personal health devices compliant with the ISO IEEE 11073 standards, and it uses the optimized exchange protocol layer. It uses standard tag operation and def read and write procedure for data exchange between the agent and the manager. And it uses PhD message, personal health device record, followed by optional MDEF record if needed. Thus, it enables an healthcare NFC-enabled device, such as blood pressure monitor, weighing scale, or glucose meter, to transmit health data via NFC. So what are the benefits? The benefits are no additional communication channel, only NFC, and the interoperability is ensured by the NFC Forum PhD compliance, and also benefits coming from NFC. I've shown a demo recently at Embedded World talking about PhD, so it's just a couple of minutes. So let's watch this together.
Are you looking for a quick and easy way to provide your health data to your doctor? Well, wouldn't it be great to do it with just one tap? Transferring personal health data is really convenient using NFC with ST products. ST25 dynamic NFC tags support the ISO IEEE 11073 standard and also the NFC Forum Personal Health Data Standard, also known as PHD. As a reminder, IEEE 11073 is a family of standards designed by ISO. It facilitates communication between medical devices and external computer systems used by doctors and physicians. This could be a blood glucose meter communicating with a tablet or smartphone, for example. The standard can use different interfaces, such as NFC. In this case, the APDU used for communication are based on NDEF. ST25DV connected to the main microcontroller of the healthcare device is the solution for efficient PHD data transfer. Let me show you how easy and fast it is. On my blood glucose meter, I added the new glucose level data. By clicking on this button, I authorize the doctor to download this data. And by tapping his phone, the doctor gets the PHD data in a few seconds and can then adjust the treatment if necessary. ST25DV embeds IEEE 11073 PHD profile application layers, and thanks to its fast transfer mode, the data transfer speed is optimized. As an example, in this demo, we write about 100 bytes in less than 3 seconds. We have developed complete deliverables, including PHD software stacks for both devices. Here I'm referring to the healthcare device and the reader, and source code for the iOS and Android mobile apps. It's practically plug and play. If you want to know more on ST25D, please contact your local ST representative or visit our dedicated product webpage on st.com/ST25D. So talk to you soon.
So, as a wireless technology, NFC enables contactless communication between a reader and a tag or a dynamic tag. What is a dynamic tag? A dynamic tag is a passive electronic component, so batteryless, that can be embedded in many types of devices, medical devices, in our case, blood glucose meters, smart skin patches, or heart rate monitor, for instance. These tags provide a wired bidirectional communication channel with the microcontroller embedded in the device that considerably augmented the system's capabilities. On the other hand, a reader is required to access the data stored in the tag. The reader can be any mobile phone with NFC capabilities, so now it's fully supported by Android and iOS, or a professional NFC reader used by maintenance teams, for instance. These dynamic NFC tags have the feature suitable for healthcare application. NFC Forum Type 5, which is a long-range operating capabilities type. This type offers a good operating volume, so offers both medical staff and patients a convenient and intuitive user experience. A fast transfer mode is another feature that allows all stakeholders from maintenance services to patients to quickly and easily update medical device firmware. The PHD compliancy, so the ST25DV from ST Microelectronics, its dynamic NFC tags comply with the PHD standards, both standards, ISO IEEE 11073 and NFC Forum PHDC standards, therefore ensuring complete interoperability and communication between medical devices. Low power capability also, dynamic NFC tags work at low power, which allows them to be well integrated into devices running on batteries. The memory from 4 to 64 kbits of EEPROM with best-in-class cycling, 1 million byte cycle, and long data retention up to 40 years, and protected with password too. Another interesting feature is the energy harvesting. It lets device function without requiring a battery, which is particularly useful in case of failure or running out of battery. So there will be a lot more to discuss on this topic, but time flies. So for this reason, I point you to a couple of resources here. You can have a look in the next days. The first one is a white paper. You can frame the QR code now if you wish to get the link immediately, or I prompt you to visit our dedicated webpage on our st.com website. Thanks a lot for your attention. If you have any question, I would be happy to hear from you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tanya. To everyone in the audience, in case there have been any questions regarding Tanya's presentation, just write it into our chat field on the right-hand side of your screen, so in the panel, and we will then, if there is still time at the end, forward these questions to the presenter for an answer. And so far, thank you, Tanya, for this presentation from ST Microelectronics side. And we will now move forward to the second presentation of today's webinar, which is from Dr. John Rogers of Northwestern University, dealing with his update on flexible substrates and NFC. John?
Great, thank you, Stefan. It's a real pleasure to be here. So as was mentioned, I'm on the faculty here at Northwestern University, and I'm also director of a Query Simpson Institute for Bioelectronics. And the mission of the Institute is to develop various forms of biocompatible electronic devices, targeted ultimately to applications in human healthcare, but also considering opportunities for devices that could facilitate animal model studies of pharmaceutical agents and various other fundamental questions related indirectly to human healthcare. And so if you go to the next slide, we try to operate at the boundaries between engineering science and medical science. And so the Institute has two lab facilities, one here in Evanston, Illinois, where we do a lot of engineering development work, and a companion set of labs embedded in our medical complex in downtown Chicago. So we attempt to develop new devices in our engineering facilities and then launch those into the medical community for pilot scale studies on patients in close collaborations with physicians, clinicians, nurses, and so on. And so in the next 10 minutes or so, I'll share with you a few new device concepts that exploit NFC technology in that broader area of human healthcare. So if you go to the next slide, I'll describe a few different platforms, but also mention that our efforts are fundamentally, I guess, exploratory and academic in nature, but we're extremely interested in commercial translation. And so we have many corporate partnerships across many of our research programs. And if anyone in the audience is interested in exploring similar types of partnerships, I'd encourage you to just reach out to me directly. This is a slide that gives an overview of the industrial collaborators that we work with currently. If you go to the next slide, I'll start with a description of a few different platforms, again, that exploit NFC technology in interesting ways, we think interesting and impactful ways to change the way we think about human healthcare. And the first area of opportunity is in vital signs monitoring, premature babies. The current technology for accomplishing that kind of monitoring is illustrated on the left part of this view graph. And so it's really an awful engineering solution for these patients that consist of hardwired interfaces between biosensors that tape to the surface of the skin and expensive boxes of data acquisition electronics that allow for monitoring of key vital signs. And the vision here from a research standpoint in bioelectronics is to replace that wired-based solution with a very thin, ultra lightweight, skin-like wireless collection of sensors that can reproduce the same types of measurements that are done currently, but without all the entanglements and the burdens imposed on these patients by the current wired-based system. So if you go to the next slide, the solution that we put together relies critically on NFC technology to allow for battery-free wireless operation in platforms that have physical properties very similar to those of the surface of the skin. So these are very thin, lightweight, stretchable devices that can gently laminate on relevant parts of the anatomy for performing those kinds of vital signs measurements. It's actually two devices, one that goes on the chest, illustrated there, draped on the fingers, and another device that goes on the foot or the hand to measure blood oxygenation. So if you go to the next slide, this technology works quite well. We've deployed it onto hundreds of patients in the NICU facility, neonatal intensive care unit at Lurie Children's Hospital here in Chicago, also migrated it as well into the pediatric intensive care unit. This is an example of a baby in the PICU at Prentice Women's Hospital showing deployment of that chest unit that's measuring heart rate variability, respiration rate, and skin temperature, along with a device mounted on the foot that's measuring blood oxygenation. In this particular case, we have a long-range reader antenna that's mounted in the base of the chair that's delivering power to these devices and also serving as a wireless data communication link for continuous streaming of those vital signs measurements. And so this is sort of clinical grade tracking of vital signs with accuracy very similar to the wire-based systems, but without all the disadvantages and the high costs associated with those traditional monitoring systems. So one example of how we think NFC technology could be used more aggressively in hospital settings. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk about some other possibilities more sort of in a consumer realm. So vital signs monitoring is one role that NFC technology can play in care of vulnerable patients, but other kinds of devices that adopt that same kind of soft, flexible, skin compatible physical properties include devices as illustrated here that are designed to measure the hydration level of skin. And this can be relevant all the way from applications in advanced cosmetics and moisturizing creams to various kinds of dermatological conditions that have a more direct medical relevance. But the fact that you can build these devices without the bulk and the weight and the size associated with a battery by exploiting NFC technology allows for that kind of skin compatible form factor and the corresponding ability to really measure precisely the hydration level of skin at any anatomical location, including sensitive areas of the face and the hands, for example. So if you go to the next slide, just another example of how you can do things. In the case of the last two applications, that soft, flexible form factor was critically important. You can think about other ways to enable skin compatibility that involve not so much a focus on those mechanical properties and physical forms, but actually focusing on the overall size of the devices and trying efforts in engineering to build sensors of those general types, but in platforms that are as small as possible to eliminate burden and possible irritation at the body interface. And so we've been working on ultra small scale NFC technologies as well. So sort of in the range of a few millimeters in diameter. This is one example of a device of that type. If you go to the next slide, there are various kinds of opportunities that arise from ultra miniaturized NFC devices, and one of them is that it opens up mounting locations beyond those that are relevant to skin to places on the body where mounting maybe has associated with it fewer constraints and restrictions than those associated with the skin itself. And we've been interested in the fingernail in particular because of the slow rates of growth, the absence of nerve endings, and the fact that the fingernail is transparent allows it to be used as an optical window for making optical measurements of the tissue oxygenation levels in the tissue bed directly underneath the nail. And so you can actually do photoplethysmography by including a pair of LEDs, one in the IR, one in the red, coupled with an NFC antenna and a system on a chip technology to do not only blood oxygenation, but you can also measure heart rate and respiration rate using a battery-free device mounted on the fingernail as illustrated here. So if you go to the next slide, this turns out to be pretty simple but powerful technology that might allow for ubiquitous kind of health monitoring, where the reader interface could be embedded in a mouse, for example, or a keyboard, or it could be embedded directly in your phone, most of which are equipped with NFC technology. And so you can imagine mounting these devices behind the earlobe and then allowing for continuous vital signs monitoring during phone calls, just as a concept, other things that are possible. If you go to the next slide, I'll sort of shift gears and talk about the use of NFC technologies, not directly with human patients, but with animal models to study responses and to do drug discovery, for example, ultimately of relevance to human health, but where the technology is not designed for a direct human interface. And one of those studies involves light to control neural processes. This is an area of neuroscience research that it's exploding in interest. It uses genetic modifications to create light sensitivity and specific cell types, neural circuits that allow them to be silenced or stimulated as a way to tease out fundamental processes of the brain. And those studies historically have been done with external light sources, fiber optic coupling of light into regions of the brain of interest, as illustrated here. But the fiber optic creates a physical tether that modulates natural behaviors of small animal models. So here again, NFC technology can be important if you go to the next slide, because it provides a wireless battery-free mechanism for supplying power and control signals to extremely small cellular scale LEDs that can be implanted into the brains of these small animals or other regions of their body to allow sort of remote control of those neural processes. This is an example of one of those devices. So it becomes fully implantable, can operate over indefinite periods of time, not limited by battery storage capacity, for example, to facilitate these kinds of studies. If you go to the next slide, I think it shows images of these devices operating in metallic cage environments for various studies of basic neuroscience processes, and the magnetic inductive coupling mechanism associated with NFC technology allows you to do this in a way that's minimally affected by these conductive elements in these cage environments. If you go to the next slide, these devices can be implanted really not only in the brain, but other soft tissue locations across the bodies of these animals for studies of the peripheral nervous system, the spinal cord, for example. If you go to the next slide, because the NFC technology is so small and doesn't require a battery, you can get these devices into animals without any noticeable effect on their locomotor behaviors. This is an example of a device that's interfaced with the sciatic nerve and the soft muscle tissue of the hind quarters of the animal without affecting its behaviors. If you go to the next slide, the other thing that becomes possible that's outside of the realm of a tethered-based approach to delivering light into the brain is you can study social interactions. Impossible with fiber optics because the animals immediately get entangled with one another through that fiber optic cable. So you can do social studies of neuroscience behaviors. So if you go to the next slide, so this kind of technology is now ubiquitous for use by the neuroscience community. We've deployed almost 400 systems worldwide, and the implants themselves are single use. So we've sold about 25,000 of those through a very small company that we launched a few years ago. So another kind of application that could be considered for NFC technology. If you go to the next slide, I think that's kind of a summary of what I was aiming to share with the group today. Both skin-like, battery-free wireless devices for vital signs monitoring on the skin, and then these ultra miniaturized devices for monitoring of health status of humans, but also as research tools for doing small animal model studies of various processes related to human health. So thank you very much for your attention. I'd be happy to answer questions, and if you need more information, feel free to reach out to me directly by email.
Thank you very much, John. This is really impressive. Questions, as said before, can be put into our panel on the right-hand side, and we will then look through them after the three presentations after the closing. The third presentation today in our webinar on NFC in healthcare is from Grapheal. CEO Vincent Bouchard will take over now about the topic NFC communication in smart diagnostics with using biosensors. Vincent, it's your turn. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Do you hear me correctly? Yes. Yes. I would like to follow up the very impressive presentation of Professor Rogers and show here, in our case, how we would like to really get the market at relatively short term, because the product I'm going to show you are not yet on the market at the clinical stage, and how a new technology based on plastic electronic, printed electronic based on graphene can be very efficiently interfaced with NFC tools. So that's really the presentation of today. So during the pandemic, next slide, please. Yes, we've seen a lot of tools deployed in the field. We've seen first system not very accurate, not exactly measuring what we need to measure, such only the thermometry for the fever. Then we got very nice tools, much more appropriate to target the problems. However, they were slow, 15 minutes, not digital, requiring a doctor or some nurse inside. And Finally, we got also a very nice tool, very accurate, very powerful, high precision, but very costly and require sometimes logistics and also inefficient for field measurements. Also, all of this really puts that there is a need for rapid field diagnostics. So the way we would like to address that is to see how we can interface using the tool which has been deployed for financial data. NFC is ubiquitous for financial data processing. And so we could use this ecosystem, which is secure, and the fact that 94% of the world population has a direct access to smartphone and is familiar with NFC for mass transportation ticket, for credit card, so they can use this in a trusted way to acquire health data. And I think already the ecosystem of IC, which are available from the industry, can do that right now. So the way to do that is to use these tools to address markets which are already there. There is the market of the continuous monitoring, remote patient monitoring of chronic disease, which is developing very fast. We've seen that with the glucose meter, for example. There is the detection on site. Of course, the pandemic is over, but there are many other needs which are remaining there, including for measurements of toxic elements, for prevention of intoxication, for control access, where you need to measure some health data rapidly. Next slide. So the way which has been developed, this is a presentation from TI, which present the process flow which is needed to do that. So basically you have a sensors which deliver something such as a variation of current, of resistivity. This is measured by analog to digital converter, compute, written some memory and store in an encrypted way, read again, and then transmit again to some communication tools, to the smartphone or to a tablet. So that's a bit the principle of it. And now if we look more into the detail, next slide. The way it's done on chip is using some elements such as a microcontroller. The microcontroller will measure the data, store them, and then will communicate with the NFC that can also generate the energy to power all the systems. So there is the energy source which is needed for continuous monitoring, but it can be also avoided in many cases, and which is an important feature here. And today, also during the pandemic, we see a very large improvement of the cloud data storage. The ecosystem is now flourishing with a lot of existing solutions which are secure, which aggregate many types of vital signs, and where that could benefit to have more biomarkers information recorded. And fusion of this data will boost the precision medicine at reasonable cost and hospital at home solution. Next slide. I would like to show you a way which also at the same time reduce the bill of material. And at the end, you can have only a bill of material of two components, the system on chip, which is here, and the sensor itself. So the sensor on one side is directly interfaced with analog to digital converters through the sensor front end. And then this will be powered by the RFID analog front end. So that's one of the key features here out of the 6, which I find here very relevant for an healthcare element. Second, we can power at constant voltage with a rather well voltage regulation, the device. That's a second very important point, without the need of battery. The third point is that you have a multiplexer that can acquire in parallel up to 6 channels, which is very important if you want to measure simultaneously different biomarkers. All of this is digitized with an ADC, which quality vary from vendor to vendor, but which reach enough quality so that we can measure tiny variation and a small amount of biomarkers. Data logging is very important because you have on-site a precise clock, but still you can access to a deep sleep to reduce during measurement the energy consumption. Then you have, of course, very importantly, a microcontroller unit, which will enable the data processing, and the diagnostic can be made on chip and not in the app. And that's very important because the firmware of this device will become the medical device, and the application in the smartphone will be a companion, will be an accessory, much less prone to regulation, and that you can update when you have a new version of Android, for example. Next slide. So this has been shown first on the wide and very successful market, which is a continuous glucose monitoring, where all of this has been deployed in the first version in NFC, and that's shown how all the power of this and completely changed the life of many diabetic patients. And that was really the most successful industrial application so far. And I think it's really a trailblazing for many other applications. Next slide. So if we compare with competing technology, there is RFID, which has other advantages such as a longer range, but there are a bit more problematic elements for biosecurity, cybersecurity, which is very secure in NFC due to the short range. Bluetooth is more and more popular, but Bluetooth has a long range and enable push data. However, it has a very strong energy consumption, which require absolutely a battery is mandatory. So, and the cost also, and the bill of material will be much higher. So NFC sits still now at a very sweet point between low consumption, energy converting capability, flexible substrate, as we saw in the previous presentation, and security. Next slide. So the real element that we've seen in this continuous glucose monitoring, and the fact that we can remove the use of a dedicated reader. We can use every smartphone as the reader, also as the interface, using the wonderful ergonomy of the app to really guide the patient in a test, for example, an in vitro diagnostic, or to get meaningful data in a correct way to acquire the data. It reduces cost and maintenance. In many cases, you don't need battery, as I said. Ergonomy is very important, and also, I think very importantly, it improves accessibility of in vitro diagnostic and digital health in very remote area where actually you have 4G deployed or 3G deployed, even if you don't have access to electricity. And the fact you have the 3G and the smartphone is enough to do very accurate point of care devices. And that will be, I think, a major boost for the deployment of this device. Next slide. So here is some example we developed in our company. I insist that they are not yet commercial. They are still at the clinical stage, and they need certification, CE mark or FDA approval to be sold commercially. So we use a flexible device, which is a graphene electrode, a monolayer of carbon, on which we graft elements to make the system sensitive to a given analyte, even in body fluids such as sweat, blood, or exudate of a wound, for example. You have the system on chip I just described before that directly interface, and you have the antenna that will power the device when you approach the smartphone, and that will take back the information and some diagnostic that can be acquired by the system on chip. If you don't have battery here, you cannot do remote monitoring unless you have a small capacitors that you can load during approaching the smartphone proximity of the device. So here in insist it's very minimalistic in component. You can have a bill of material very reduced, which reduce the cost, which reduce the ecological impact, but still have a multiplex biomarker detection. Next slide. So one of the use cases we are looking at the clinical stage at the moment is the integration as a smart wound, a smart bandage device, where we measure pH variation, also exudate variation, and we can communicate through the bandage without opening the bandage to the device of the nurse. And that will be a critical element for the follow-up of diabetic foot ulcers, for example, which is a a major source of amputation today, and many other wound care elements that will benefit from this technology. Next slide. Another here important point is the fact that you can directly collect the data on the telehealth service that will aggregate data versus time, bandage after bandage, and you can get a full history of the wound in the sensor cloud that will help the outcome, give back information and alert to the nurse, and also improve through the learning over the many cases, the prognosis of the wound, and will be a major improvement to the management of wound, which is still a headache for many caregivers today. I would like to switch to another use case, which is based on the exact same technology, but with a completely different application. Next slide. So the second use case has been developed during the pandemic. It's an antigen test based on the exact same antibodies that you use in a paper test strip. But this, you have that on the small cartridge that we deliver an impedance, which is function as a function of time of the presence or the absence of the antigen of the coronavirus. You can get result quite fast. And the important thing is that the result can be directly integrated in a secure device, which can be in turn used as a digital evidence of the test. I insist that this test is going to be GDPR compliant, which means that it's impossible for somebody who finds the test in the street or without having access to it to take any information back. The test is personal because at the beginning of the test, we use a selfie to make it completely associated with a given person, but you don't have to enter any other personal information. Next slide. So the way it's deployed on the field is as follows. There is first the chip, system on chip is used to power the biosensors, ensure secure communication between the smartphone app and the microcontrollers. They will also energy harvest up to 5 sensors without the use of battery. And secondly, the exact same MCU will be used as a pass, as a fob, or as an NFC token on a gate. The gate will verify that it's the same person through face recognition layers. That will unlock the result of the test, and that will be able to actually test for the presence or the absence of biomarkers. That delivered directly a sanitary test for a pandemic, but there are many other uses, for example, to check absence of intoxication at the cockpit or in the secure control room area, for example. And this could be made in a way without any personnel to check the presence or the authenticity of the digital evidence. Next slide. So these are, I would like to finish with some take-home message. We combine here many assets of the NFC, energy harvesting, interoperability with mobile technology, the capability to acquire precisely analog signal, and that makes NFC solution extremely suitable for health data collection in the field at the point of use, both by the patient and by the caregivers. The NFC devices really will unlock the new generation of wearable sensors, even those very low cost produced by printed electronics. And I believe it's going to rise a new generation of patient monitoring with a minimal electronic waste and reasonable cost. And here we see that the Safe by Design NFC enables continuous data monitoring, acquisition in the field to get a digital evidence of an health or a sanitary state. And then you get a tamper-proof device, which is compliant with GDPR elements. So that's, I think NFC will become the medium for health data in the very near futures. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vincent. So anyway, thank you all of the three speakers today for their presentations. We will now collect some questions. If anyone in the audience has some, put them in the panel. And with some closing remarks, I will finish the presentations, and afterwards we will go to the Q&A session. So just for your information, in case you would like to become a member and join these interesting discussions also in the area of healthcare, we would like to encourage everyone in the audience to become an active member of the NFC Forum. We have 4 different membership levels designed to match your organization's interests and markets plans. So depending on what you are looking for, we can start, for example, with an adopter membership without any annual dues. And the further you go, like up to a sponsor, you get more and more impact on the discussions and on the decisions made. So I would like to invite everyone who is interested to get more information from our website. And in case you are also interested to get engaged with the healthcare task force team, I can also tell you we are very happy to anyone can join our healthcare task force team within the special interest group of IoT. We will have plans for 2023 to discuss even further topics focusing on smart diagnostics, patient interaction, and under-quantified. We will invite here industry experts and start discussions around these topics. So anyone who is interested to join, just follow the NFC Forum website. And in any way, if anyone wants to become engaged, just follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. You find us anywhere in the social media. So we are looking forward to get in touch with you. Great. And now we're coming to the Q&A session. So let me have a short look about which questions there are in the room. Maybe let's start with a question to ST Microelectronics, Tanya. It is right here. Can NFC tags be packed in hermetically sealed plastic? Are such tags available on the market? Can you let us know?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Can NFC tags be packed in hermetically sealed plastic? Are such tags available on the market? Do you know?
Good question. I mean, I'm more expert in dynamic tags, meaning that there is a need of a microcontroller. But yeah, in plastic, yes, it does exist.
I can also tell from converting side that it's just a question of converting. So definitely possible, will depend on the quality of converting. But yeah, that's not a problem, I would say. Thank you. Then we have a question to Vincent from Grapheal. Do the applications presented by Grapheal use the standardized ISO and NFC Forum PHDC protocol? Vincent?
That's a very tricky question for me. I have to transmit that to my engineer. I cannot, I'm not enough expert to answer that. The system on chip we use, I'm not sure it has integrated the PHDC protocol in our special case. But I will answer more by asking my engineer on that.
Okay, thank you. Then maybe one more question. This is really for Tanya. And we have the question, why using NFC instead of Bluetooth Low Energy? Can you state the differences and your opinion on that?
Interesting question. Actually, this is a question we have quite often as an NFC expert, I mean. Yeah, no, both technology are different. I mean, even if both are wireless, both are different because actually it addresses different use cases actually. So the main difference to BLE is so there is a difference of range, reading range, because BLE is quite long range, maybe 10 meters, something like this. I'm not expert in BLE, but so NFC is a short range, up to 7-10 centimeters. First difference. Second one is the is different technology in terms of power, because BLE device needs to be powered, contrary to the NFC that can be batteryless, possible to use it without any power. And the third one is not the same use case, because the BLE, for BLE you need to pair the device, contrary to the NFC. So the NFC is more suitable for application that require a certain security, because it's short range, so very close. That's why it's used for payment, for example, and to have data very quickly, simply, no need to pair the device. BLE is more suitable for, I would say, more personal application. You have to pair your device because you need to have data quite often and without being near the device, for example. So this is the main difference between both, but most of the time both technologies complement each other. For example, if you need more security on your BLE device, you can add a small low-cost NFC tag, or you can also pair your device in BLE using NFC. Just simple tap to pair your BLE device. So it's different.
Okay, thank you. Then next question is going to Dr. John Rogers. So there was the question, what sorts of manufacturing techniques are used to produce your devices, and what are the cost considerations associated with these applications?
Yeah, it's a good question. For the technologies where we're pursuing volume, product launch and manufacturing, we try to design the architectures to align with standard practice in flexible PCB technology. So we can go to vendors who have expertise in that area. The flex boards we cut into open kind of serpentine mesh type geometries to support the interconnects, but to provide kind of mechanical compliance that's sort of enhanced by a silicone elastomer packaging layer to give the overall system the kind of elasticity that it needs for comfortable mounting on the skin. So there are a few domestic vendors that we use for manufacturing of these types of devices, and we can achieve very, very cost-effective means of production in that way.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question going to Grapheal this time. So this is more about sustainability. So the question is, how sustainable are your disposable products? Is it possible to recycle them? Is there an environmental risk?
No, that's a very important point, because we need some responsibility here. We are introducing electronics in test strip, in bandages, so in the devices that were not electronic before. So we have to think about the potential e-waste generated and the way to minimize it. I said before that the most impactful element is the battery. So if we can remove it, that's a very important improvement. Another point is the PCB. By doing additive using ink, today it's possible to make very efficient PCB that can perform energy harvesting, which was not the case in the previous year. We have new ink coming in, including ink based on copper, including the possibility to make it on paper, on cellulosic elements. So I think we're going to see here a lot of improvement with some conscious, environmentally conscious approach. In the case of the bandage, we don't want to recycle anything. So there will be the MCU for single use, which is indeed a problem, but we can think about separating it to minimize the potential pollution out of it. But for the other devices such as test strip, you can really think about recycling many times the part which deliver the data, the digital part, and the only analog part is the one which is as a single use.
Okay, thank you. This was the last question, so I think also looking at my watch, we should consider this as the last question. So let's wrap it up maybe a little bit. Thank you to the speakers today for your presentations. I think we got a really great overview on what's possible from the chip side, from what is going on right now on the science level. at university side, and also what's going on in new product developments for medical approvals. This was really a great overview, and I think also very, very beneficial for everyone attending this webinar today. Let me say, yeah, I hope you enjoyed. If there are any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out via NFC Forum. We can, of course, link you to anyone. And in case there is motivation for engaging within the NFC Forum, let us know. We will appreciate a lot. Then thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Soit j'obtiens